of Instituto Cervantes in Manila and Sydney, the embassies of Spain in the Philippines, Thailand, Malaysia, and Australia, and the AECID, in collaboration with the ICAA, the Embassy of Mexico in the Philippines, the National Film Archive of Thailand, the Sydney Film Festival, the Travelling Film Fest Australia, the Film Development Council of the Philippines, the UP Film Institute, the University of the Philippines, and Intramuros Administration.
Magandang hapon sa inyo lahat, mabuhay. Good afternoon, everyone.
Muy buenas tardes a todo el mundo. Saludos desde Manila.
From Southeast Asia and to the Pacific South and to Spain. This is Javier Galván. I'm the director of Instituto Cervantes in Manila, and I will continue for a while, short while, speaking in Spanish. But if you want to follow us in English, you can choose the language. In the lower part of your screen, you have a small globe, terraqueous globe. There you can choose either Spanish or English. Primero quiero agradecer, naturalmente, a los patrocinadores de película. También a todos ustedes, los que nos siguen, tanto las proyecciones del festival como los seminarios. También, naturalmente, a nuestros invitados de esta tarde en Manila. Y si me permiten, quiero agradecer especialmente a nuestra querida amiga Lisa Diño, directora del Film Development Council of the Philippines, que siempre está ahí con nosotros, que además es la mente que ideó este seminario, que propuso hacer este seminario hace ya algún tiempo. Efectivamente, Película no es solo un festival que muestra una selección de películas en español para entretener al público del sudeste asiático, sino que también intenta ser un lugar de encuentro entre los distintos agentes que intervienen en el hecho de la producción cinematográfica. Y deseamos, por tanto, que sea muy fructífero, seguro que lo será, este taller, y ojalá muy pronto tengamos coproducciones españolas con Filipinas y con otros países del sudeste asiático y el Pacífico Sur. Hoy, la sesión de hoy va a estar coordinada, va a ser su maestro de ceremonias, una persona que reúne magníficas condiciones para ello. Es otro querido amigo, Pedro Pascual, que durante 5 años ha dirigido la oficina comercial de la Embajada de España en Manila, que es un gran aficionado al cine, que sigue todas nuestras proyecciones y festivales, y que además, al terminar su mandato frente a la oficina comercial, él y su mujer han decidido quedarse a vivir más años en Filipinas, con lo cual es también un amante de Filipinas y de toda su cultura. Finalmente, quiero agradecerle a Pedro Pascual también el que haya aceptado este reto. Y Pedro, muchas gracias y ya te cedo la palabra. Muchas gracias a todos. Maraming salamat po.
Muchas gracias, querido Javier. Thank you very much. I feel really, it's for me a pleasure to be nominated as host for today and to be moderating this discussion among such important figures of the Philippine and Spanish and Indonesian industry. And well, for my part, I would like this to be a very agile discussion so that many ideas flow into the session. From my very humble part, I will try to put forward the business side, the connection among the producing industry, and just a few reminders for today's session for all of you that are following this webinar live today. You can ask any questions through the chat, and as my good friend Javier Galván already mentioned, for those that do not can or do not wish to follow Shakespeare's language and want to follow better Cervantes, they can do by the interpretation button down in the Zoom application. So without any further delay, it's really a great pleasure to introduce to you and to give the floor to Lisa Dino, who is the chairperson of the Film Development Council in the Philippines. Thank you very much. Lisa, the floor is all yours.
Thank you, Pedro. Good afternoon, everyone. My name is Lisa Dino. Buenos dias, buenas tardes, señoras y señores. I am the chairperson and CEO of the Film Development Council of the Philippines, and I'm happy to be sharing with you, and I'm privileged to be part of this panel again to discover how you can collaborate with the Philippines and what has been done by the Philippines to really connect with Southeast Asia, with Asia, and Europe. The Philippines has been hard at work in going global. We have created a very solid track to really expose and promote the Philippines, not just within the region, but all over the world. And we're happy that with the knowledge that we have also been receiving and been gaining from our partners, even in Spain, we have come up with our own incentives that would allow for more opportunities for collaboration in the Philippines. So let's start with our first slide, just for you to really have an idea. I mean, what is the Philippines? What can you do to collaborate with us? Are there real incentives in place where that you can activate to actually be more interested to shoot in the Philippines? So just like other film commissions all over the world, finally in 2020, we were able to launch our Film Philippines incentives. So now an international film production can come to the Philippines and enjoy a host of film incentives from our Film Philippines program. So much has been achieved, not just with additional funding, but also the opportunity to produce with another country, and for that country to actually discover the 7,641 islands in the Philippines. And of course, also work with our local talents, our local workforce, and the incentives that we have in place. So for the incentives, next slide, please. We have the Film Location Incentive Program, which offers a 20% cash rebate on Philippine production spend, or up to 200,000 pesos. So it has a cap right now, but it's a very good incentive, especially for smaller production, because you only need to spend around 8 million pesos in order for you to activate the fund. For International Co-Production Fund, it is a selective fund for international co-productions with the Philippines. We also give up to $200,000, and this International Co-Production Fund also allows for the Philippines to have a real co-production with another country. And we've had a lineup and a good number of film productions that have already been supported by this International Co-Production Fund since its launch in 2020. Our newest incentive, which supports partnerships and collaboration between our ASEAN neighbors, and the Philippines is the ASEAN Co-Production Fund. So it's pretty much set up like the ADU Cinema du Monde, where you only have to spend 50% of the grant given to you in the Philippines, and you can spend the 50% in your own country. So what's the goal in this? We want our goal is to not just represent the Philippines, but to also work with different regions, and for us to work as one region together with the different territories all over the world. So, you know, since its launch, there's been a number of Southeast Asian productions that have been very, very interested to work in the Philippines and work with the Philippines. And you realize that there's so much similarities, so much commonalities between the Philippines and other Southeast Asian countries. And right now, there's actually more and more Southeast Asian countries that are actually creating their own fund as well, so that, you know, our own Southeast Asian filmmakers don't just activate or look into the available European grants or funds, but also look within the region as to how they can support and fund their films. So aside from the incentives, we also participate in many, many international film festivals where we always see Spain. I remember in 2017, I was supported by the Spanish embassy when I to an international mission in Spain, and they introduced me to the different government agencies that have these mechanisms of support to support the sector, to support the film industry. And much of the learnings I've gained from that trip is what we have applied in our local mechanisms of support. So festivals is a very important forms of support in the Philippines, because this is our way to promote the Philippines all over the world. Filipino films have been awarded and acclaimed at several international film festivals across the globe, proving that there's much interest in our films from a fast expanding world audience. We also participate in markets. At the Berlinale, one of the top 3 international film festivals, we have had great opportunities in forging alliances with European cinema community. We also send creative producers for them to understand how to actually work with international stakeholders. What does it mean to be, what is international co-production? How do you actually work in this context? And what kind of tools do I need, or does a local producer need in order for us to work with international partners? So from Cannes to Berlin to Locarno to Venice Film Festival, we have had presence in these very important film festivals, and even San Sebastian, just so that our local creative producers can be more inspired, can be equipped with the knowledge to work with international partners. We also have, so while we have these markets where we participate and where we create these opportunities to talk, to have these conversations, to have dialogues with different international stakeholders, we also have programs that will provide global insights to our local stakeholders. So while we have this track for international internationalization of our content, our filmmakers, our producers, we also have the International Film Industry Conference. So this is a local conference that a local conference held in the Philippines, but it's international in nature, because we bring in international stakeholders to talk about global trends, to talk about the different aspects of filmmaking, from film financing to co-production to distribution and exhibition of content. How do you work now with the streamers? what's the trend now when it comes to film financing? How do you access grants in this pandemic? Like, how does it work? I mean, which countries are actually still offering this kinds of funding opportunities? So we want to make sure that, you know, while we are really promoting Philippine cinema all over the world, that our local stakeholders would know and will be more empowered to understand and really have that knowledge to work with different countries. We also hold an annual Asean Roundtable. So this is an opportunity to have dialogue and discussions with the different ASEAN countries all over the region. This is an opportunity to just understand each other's best practices. What can we do? How can we learn from each other? What are the opportunities for collaboration? How can we, you know, work together as one region towards a particular territory? So this is something that we do every year, and it really supports a lot of initiatives, not just from our country, but from other countries as well. And it's a good way to actually learn about what each other is doing. One of the most important component that I think right now has been kind of like set a change in the way Filipinos make their films is our film labs. So Full Circle Lab Philippines, this is a capacity building program aimed to support Filipino and Southeast Asian filmmakers. So development has been an integral part of making films. And in the Philippines before, we used to make films within 3 months, and there's no more time. There's not much time to develop the stories. There's not much time to think about like who's the audience, where are we going to send our films, who's going to watch our films. And the Full Circle Lab allows for that opportunity to really understand and scrutinize and develop our films, and also bring in, you know, ideas and concepts from other countries. And we've opened it up to Southeast Asian filmmakers, and we're already on our 3rd year for Full Circle Lab Philippines. And a lot of the films that projects that came from Full Circle Lab has already been going around in various international film festivals all over the world, and we're very happy to have played, you know, even a small part in the successes of these films that have already enjoyed international success. So in the last 3 years that the Full Circle Lab Philippines have been launched, we have had projects that participated in the Berlinale co-production market, have premiered in the Annecy Film Festival as the first animated feature film, like with Hayop Ka. We've also had films that premiered in Tokyo International Film Festival and Tallinn Film Festival, Berlinale, and all these huge festivals that created a lot of international exposure to our films. So this is something that is very, very important to the FDCP, very, very important for the Philippines, and very important for the region. And we hope to continue that and expand in the years to come. And lastly, our FDCP channel. So FDCP channel is our streaming platforms, because, you know, we're also adapting with the times. Our cinemas are still closed right now, so we want to give an opportunity for our local filmmakers to still find a place where they can showcase their films. But this is also a dream for us to be able to bring in international content, work with different producers from distributors from all over the world to see FDCP channel as their distribution platform, together with our existing cinematheques all over the Philippines. So right now we have 5 cinematheque centers. This is our art house cinemas, around 100 to 150 seats, and we curate our own films, our own content, and I hope that this will not just open up opportunities for our local films to be showcased in these platforms and venues, but also for other countries like Spain and Southeast Asia to find audiences in the Philippines through these platforms. So in a nutshell, this is what we do, and I hope it's given everyone an idea about what the Philippines is doing right now with the rest of the world.
Thank you very much, Lisa, for this very comprehensive and interesting presentation of all the opportunities, incentives, and that the FDCP is offering for producing or co-producing in the Philippines. So yeah, a lot of questions come to my mind, but let's give first the floor to the other panelists before we start really in the proper discussion. So moving forward, I would like to present to Julia Ebinabara, who is a famous Indonesian producer, and I'm pretty sure that she can give a very interesting opinion and insight on the obstacles that may face co-producing with different countries.
Hello, good afternoon. Hello, Chair Liza. I always enjoy your talks. So, thank you so much, Pedro. Good afternoon, everyone. It's an honor to be here. And thank you very much for having me. I'm Yulia Evinabara. I'm film producer from Indonesia. I'm a CEO and producer in Kawan Kawan Media, a production company Jakarta-based. We are focused in the international co-production and distribution. I produce short fictions and documentary. Among others are On the Origin of Fear by Bayu Philemon. It was premiered in Venice 2016. Solo Solitude by Joseph Angginun in 2016, premiered in Locarno. The Sign of Fictions by Joseph Angginun was premiered in Locarno 2019, and it won a special mention Golden Leopard. Documentary UNI by Fani Kotimah, it was premiered in DMZ Docs and won the Best Film in Asean section. And just months ago, we premiered our co-production film, Whether the Weather is Fine by Carlo Francisco Manata in Toronto, and it was screened in Toronto a week ago. And now I am working on several projects with the co-production scheme, including Tiger Stripes by Amanda Nel Eu, a Malaysian director, Autobiography by Makbul Mubarak, Indonesian director. So why I choose the co-production scheme? I believe that the first reason why the producer choose this co-production scheme is because of the financing reason. Always to access like Asian co-production grant, ACOP in the Philippines, Singapore co-production grant in Singapore, Cinema Tumong, and others of this financing scheme. But then after a while, I realized that this is not just happened because of the financing scheme. The second reason is because of distribution. To reach the audiences in the country of the co-producers, also internationally, like what we did in Whether the Weather is Fine by Carlo Francisco Manatat. We prepare for the theatrical release here in Indonesia, even though we don't have Indonesian element in this film, but because somehow this is also connected with Indonesian audiences, we also have earthquake, natural disaster, and also like the actors like Daniel Padilla also have a big follower in Indonesia, and somehow it can connect us. And the third reason is artistic collaboration to reach the certain artistic goals that can only be reached by the co-production. For example, that we really want to work with this Polish DOP and also editor from the Philippines on our project Autobiography, and it only can be happen because of this co-production scheme. So. And where to meet your co-producers? This is very important because like the Sign of Fictions, the one that I mentioned before, we met our co-producers in Venice Gap Financing. It was in 2016, as I remember. And Autobiography is Indonesia, Singapore, Philippines, Poland, and France, and also Germany co-production. We met the co-producer because we developed this project in 2017 in Torino Film Lab, and after that we selected to Berlinale Co-Production Market, Locarno Open Doors, Thais Dead Bind, First Cut Lab just only few days ago. All the co-producers on board because we met them in this platform. And so I would say that lab and co-production market is the best place to meet your potential partners. And how to get the lab and project market is that if you are the first, if you don't have a feature film, you have to make a short film and then try to get it in the film festival, and then after that develop your project with your producer and submit it to the lab and market in the best time, not too early but also not too late. And from this experience, I also heard many experience that sometimes happen like a bloody co-production, sometimes could be very like a happy marriage, something like that. So yeah, producers' life is actually very social, and in the same time it's also lonely, because yeah, you have to be a very social when you have to make your film, to promote your film, but in certain decision it's have to be you to decide after discuss, of course, with your director and your team. But I think don't be afraid about this, because like me, like us, this is not us, the first generation who did this co-production scheme. We have someone who did it before us, and luckily now lots of the Southeast Asian producer working in this field. We can share our burden, pain, happiness with the other producer in our region. For example, like I almost talk every day with Lambert Ang, Army Katangindin, and also Bianca Balbuena, the producer from the Philippines, and also the other producer from our Southeast Asian region, because we can learn from the success and also the fail of each other. So I think, Pedro, I will end my talks. Thank you so much.
Thank you very much, Julia, for your very sharp presentation and going into very interesting points that I would like to tackle a bit further on. But now is the turn of Pilar Crespo. She's a producer as well from Spain. And now I just want to remind that you can, if you want to switch to English or to Spanish, you can press the interpretation button. So, Pilar, please, the floor is all yours.
Hola a todos. Muchas gracias por la invitación. Encantada de estar con vosotros. Lo primero que quiero decir es darle la enhorabuena a Lisa y a su equipo, porque es increíble la cantidad de actividades y muy interesante todo lo que ha contado sobre lo que hacéis ahí. Sí es verdad que ahora mismo en España, hace mucho tiempo ya, pero ahora como más, estamos todos los productores muy proactivos en hacer coproducciones internacionales. Yo lo que voy a hacer es muy rápidamente contaros las fuentes de financiación que tenemos en España. Y bueno, siempre es bueno la coproducción porque al final es otras fuentes de financiación que buscamos fuera del país y que amplían y mejoran el proyecto. Lo único que yo sí siempre me parece muy importante que sean los contenidos los que hablen y que la coproducción internacional no se esfuerce, sino que realmente el contenido pida que ese proyecto en sí sea una coproducción internacional, ¿no? Que ese proyecto tenga que viajar porque el contenido te lleva afuera. En España he estado haciendo como un repaso rápido y la verdad es que me salen bastantes fuentes de financiación interesantes. Por un lado tenemos las ayudas públicas, que las tenemos a nivel nacional, a nivel regional, también hay ayudas locales, tenemos las ayudas media que son con Europa, ayudas ibermedia con Latinoamérica, o sea, hay muchas fuentes de financiación ahí de ayudas en todos los niveles, nacional, regional, local. Pero con las ayudas hay que tener cuidado siempre porque al final, como su nombre indica, son una ayuda, ¿no? Entonces nunca una ayuda te va a financiar un proyecto al completo, sino que va a ser como un aporte o un apoyo. Y luego, bueno, son algunas un poco complejas y hay que mirar bien ahí, pero sí en España ya contemplamos, hay ayudas públicas que contemplan y favorecen la coproducción internacional en ciertos puntos, y eso es muy positivo para los productores españoles, ¿no? Por otro lado están las televisiones. En España tenemos televisiones nacionales en abierto, privadas, públicas, en fin, diferentes televisiones. Que lo que tienes que hacer ahí es tener mucho cuidado con el conflicto de derechos que se pueda ocasionar entre ellas, si quieres unir varias televisiones, y depende un poco del formato, y en ese caso depende también de la televisión en sí, de las necesidades que la televisión tenga, pero es una gran fuente de financiación. Suelen entrar como coproductores o suelen adquirir los derechos de emisión del proyecto para emitirlo. Luego tenemos las plataformas en España, que no sé, creo que sabéis que han llegado todas prácticamente. Ha sido un poco loco. Están invirtiendo mucho dinero. Ellos favorecen también mucho la coproducción internacional porque al final son contenidos para España, pero que luego si viajan pues siempre es positivo para el proyecto. Y aquí viene también la complejidad de aunar que te entre una plataforma en el proyecto y que aunes con una televisión quizá nacional. En fin, ahí está un poco el puzzle, pero bueno, las plataformas suelen ser para derechos VOD y SVOD, con lo cual normalmente las cosas casan bien. Yo creo que este es el trabajo que tenemos que hacer los productores, de armar todo ese puzzle y que el proyecto, que al final es el jefe, digamos, camine, ¿no? Como debe caminar. Luego, bueno, si es un proyecto cinematográfico, tenemos el ingreso en taquilla de las salas. Luego tenemos las distribuidoras, que normalmente entran con un MG, que es un mínimo garantizado con el que entran antes de rodar en la producción. Esa posibilidad también existe, también es otra fuente de financiación interesante. Luego están los agentes de ventas internacionales, como sabemos, que también pueden aportar algún dinero y que se encargan de distribuir el proyecto luego una vez que está ya producido. Y luego, bueno, como comentaba Lisa, en España también tenemos los incentivos fiscales. Además, antes era un poco complicado porque había que hacer como una estructura empresarial nueva, una AIE, Agrupación de Interés Económico. Era un sistema un poco complejo y desde este año ya pues han hecho que el proceso sea un poco más fácil, y las desgravaciones fiscales que tienen los inversores privados que entran en el proyecto en España, la verdad es que son muy interesantes, y ya digo, se ha facilitado mucho el proceso. De todas formas, aunque se ha facilitado, siempre es bueno contar con algunos abogados o así, o algún equipo de consultoría. ¿Para qué? Porque ellos se encargan de buscar al inversor y de firmar ese contrato, que ahora ya sí se puede hacer directamente desde la productora con el inversor privado, y es como mucho más fácil, pero aún así es bueno que contar con un equipo de abogados que cierre todo el proceso bien. Así en rápido, por ser muy rápida y muy breve, todo esto es lo que repaso en España, y poner en valor eso, que ahora mismo sí que estamos todos los productores con mucho interés en hacer coproducciones internacionales, en viajar hacia afuera. La complejidad, bueno, es siempre eso, ¿no? Armar el puzzle y para que todo camine y todo cuadre, ¿no? Y el problema es siempre un poco por dónde empezar. Yo por lo menos siempre me encuentro con eso, porque es verdad que los tiempos son muy importantes por las ayudas y los compromisos que adquieres, y al final, bueno, yo creo que cuando adquieres la primera fuente de financiación, que es algo que entra ya en el proyecto, a partir de ahí ya camina como más fácil. Y bueno, como decía Julia también, es verdad que pues actividades como estas son maravillosas para encontrarnos y conocernos, y como decía ella, los mercados obviamente son un lugar estupendo donde siempre acabamos pues conectándonos, y si hay contenidos que tenemos en común, pues los productores acordamos, hablamos y para adelante.
Muchas gracias, Pilar. Muy interesantes tus reflexiones sobre las las formas de financiación, todos los diferentes niveles. So thank you very much. So now it's the time for a more open discussion. So I don't see any questions now, so I will start with my own question. So it seems to me, and I was the idea that I already had, that financing is critical in any business. Financing is the spark that puts everything into movement. So I also see here that it's very good and very convenient for a co-production to have financing from different countries, so they can play both sides. But beyond the financing, and I like very much the reflection done by Julia, there is the distribution advantage and the artistic collaboration. So how much would you say that it weighs, and when you decide to go forward in a co-production to what in this mix? So the financing is critical, we all understand, but then the other part, let's say the artistic or the distribution issues, how much does it weigh in your decision?
Hello, can you hear me? What else? Sorry. What again the question? Because I think I have a problem with the sound.
Sorry. So the financing was the first point that you raised, but then other items that really make the decision for really pushing through a production would be the distribution advantages of different partners, and then to be able to raise an artistic collaboration. So yeah. How important are these three elements? What would you say?
Yeah, I think different project has different approach. Like, of course, for me, like I try to get 50% the budget from our country, and then the 50 more from I mean, like ideally like that 50% is from outside of Indonesia. But I think in our case, because our company is we focus on the international distribution and also this co-production. All of the film that we made, if we would like to distribute it to the international audiences, I think it's not only about the financing. It also have to be artistic, at least like one like crew coming to the set, yeah, something like that. So I think that those elements have to be in one film ideally, but somehow because of like a restriction during the pandemic, we only can collaborate in the financing or like a studio in post-production studio in France or in Spain, for example. This is also things that could be happen. Yeah.
Thank you very much. Just raising another question that is really very related to the times that we are living. This past year and a half, the mobility restrictions have been huge, but has this really made a big obstacle in the co-production or in the production industry? Because I assume it has been a huge delay in some projects that were previously done, and just another reflection that comes maybe from other sectors that I'm active. Maybe 2020 was not the year that everything stopped, because a lot of projects were already ongoing. But then would we see maybe a lack of projects in the coming years because of financial constraints, or maybe the people were not so active last year?
Yeah, but I don't know. I'm really optimistic producer. So in 2020, even we have many projects postponed, but I'm happy that the autobiography we shoot in 2020 with lots of restriction. We can bring the crew from Poland, we can bring the crew from the Philippines, the editor from the Philippines, and we finished the shooting just 2 days before the second lockdown in Indonesia. Yes, we have this kind of I mean, like other people in every country, but I'm sure that there will be always a way to even though like many like initiation regarding the funding, it's only happen during the pandemic. For example, like the FDCP now has a lot of the initiation, and our government just a few months ago they support the film that will distribute to the international field. So I think, I don't know, I'm still optimistic that we can collaborate. I mean, especially with the winning of the film from the Southeast Asian in the Locarno and also in Toronto. I believe that we can bring it more and more collaboration in the future.
Thank you very much, Julia. Maybe just a last question for any of the three panelists. So I assume, or I imagine that there are always cultural and linguistic obstacles that maybe are not determinant, but do you really think that it's easier to co-produce with countries that are, let's say, in a closer environment? Because in economics, we always speak about gravity models. So what is closer is easier, that it attracts more traction, right? So, or it is possible, or do you know examples of very distant countries that have really very good understanding and very good co-production initiatives?
I'd like to answer that. Actually, it's actually very interesting, you know, how the countries that the Philippines have already worked with, and it's not Asia. It's actually France and Germany, because there has been a long-standing relationship between Europe and the Philippines in terms of the track of our local films being screened in international film festivals. Also, the opportunities that our producers have in terms of accessing this European funds. There's the understanding between these countries when they work together has developed. So because the Southeast Asian countries, it's actually just recently that they started working together, started finding opportunities for collaboration, whether it is through creative partnerships or through financial collaboration. And because Southeast Asia as a region has different languages, so there's actually a language barrier compared to Europe, where there's people speak in different languages, but there's this EU that unifies and finds commonality among all the European countries. So that's that dynamics is actually more of the reason why Philippines or other countries in Asia work better, have this more established relationship with Europe than Southeast Asia. So language is always going to be a barrier when it comes to working with different countries. But now that there are these financial incentives in place, you're forced to look into your neighbors and see the commonalities among these Southeast Asian countries, and then you discover, wow, we have the same sensibilities, we have the same culture and traditions, and even if we talk different languages, their traditions is so similar to ours. I mean, I watched a Malaysian film, and they have this tradition called the bayanihan, where they bring the houses in different places. That's exactly how Philippines tradition is, and it's so interesting. And now that I've seen more partnerships between countries, I know that they're discovering that with each other. So it's beautiful.
Thank you very much. Pilar, one question, because it's the only Spanish producer here in the Roundtable. So how about the possibilities and prospects for a co-production in the Philippines? How do you see it? We know that you're maybe thinking about it. So please tell us a little bit about it, and we're happy to hear.
Estoy de acuerdo con todo lo que han comentado Lisa y Julia. Es verdad que los contenidos cada vez son más universales, ¿no? Y que están viajando súper bien. Esto lleva mucho lo local, que dicen ahora, que es algo muy local, pero que he pensado para global. O sea que ahí yo creo que el futuro es eso, coproducir. Sí es verdad que en España antes todo se doblaba, y ahora con la llegada de las plataformas la gente se está acostumbrando mucho más a ver cosas en versión original, lo cual es maravilloso, y esa barrera del lenguaje se rompe cada vez más. Y luego lo que decía Julia, hay muchas posibilidades de coproducción. Sí es verdad que la financiación es muy importante, pero está la postproducción, que es una parte como al final que se puede hacer en algún sitio en concreto, la música, toda la edición, o sea, eso es como más operativo en algunos casos. Los equipos, nosotros, por ejemplo, tenemos un proyecto ahora de documental que conecta con Filipinas, por eso estoy encantada de conocer a Lisa, de conocer a Julia. El contenido hablado y conecta con Filipinas es sobre Amparo Muñoz, la Miss Universo española, que bueno, tuvo ahí una gran etapa, y por eso es bueno conocer a productoras de allí para plantear una coproducción, y como decía Julia, hay muchas opciones. O sea, está la postproducción. Si yo, por ejemplo, quiero grabar algo en Filipinas para este documental, por ir al caso concreto, a lo mejor es ella la que puede llevar esa parte de la grabación, Julia, y como coproductora, y ella se puede encargar de poner a alguien de su equipo. Si es algo de ficción, que no es el caso este en concreto, pero si es algo de ficción, siempre necesitamos actores de los dos países, y es mejor un productor nacional de allí que busca un cast y que busca esos actores quizás más conocidos. O sea, ellos conocen, cada productor conoce un poco su territorio, y esa colaboración siempre es buena y positiva.
Thank you very much, Pilar.
I totally agree. Can I just also add that there's also the part of not just post-production, but also animation. Spanish animation industry is so strong. And right now, the Philippines has been known as a service provider for animation services. So in our travels to Segovia at the 3D Wire Film Fest, at the 3D Wire Animation Film Festival, there has been a lot of possible collaboration between Spain and the Philippines in terms of animation. So it's not just really the location itself, but it's actually also discovering the talents from both countries and see what works and what can be done together.
Sí, al final es lo que decía Julia, que el proyecto es el que depende de cada proyecto, pero si lo escuchas te muestra un poco el camino y a dónde tienes que ir y cómo.
I absolutely agree with Lisa. In animation is the only example that in my 5 years in the office, I really saw a collaboration, business collaboration from the Philippines, having here many animators and giving service to the lab that was in Madrid, most particularly. So there is another huge field for collaboration. So we are running out of time. So I would just like to give a last round of messages to all the panelists to maybe give a wrap-up message, and then we will close the session for today. Please, Lisa.
Okay. Well, you know, this pandemic has really taught us that the film industry is a global market. You know, films are coming in and films are going out of our country. So there's really no other way but for us to understand how we can work together with not just within our own sector, but to really reach out and discover other countries as well. And with all of these platforms being made available for us, that is global, that is multicultural, there's a lot of opportunities for us to understand what works, not just in our country, but with what works with the rest of the world. And as long as you have governments that can also create a structure to enable this kind of ecosystem, then it will be a lot easier for our countries to work with other countries, because we need these kinds of structure in order for us to easily work with other countries as well. And the FDCP, as a government agency representing the Philippines, is always finding opportunities for us to make it more easier for our producers to work with our global partners, especially Spain and Southeast Asia, because right now, I mean, there's just a lot of activities going on between Southeast Asia, and that link with Spain has always been there, and I've always been talking to Javier and Ambassador on how we can work with Spain, and hopefully this can be the next step, because we already have an incentive in place as well. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Lisa. Julia.
Yeah, so I think this pandemic teach us that the cinema definition is always like develop, like change, and I think now we have to celebrate it, and the key is about to a collaboration, because cinema definition is changed means that our audiences is global audiences. So the way to we face this is only to collaborate each other, I think. Yeah.
Thank you, Julia. And Pilar.
Nada, estoy de acuerdo con las dos. Añadir eso, que estamos ahora mismo haciendo contenidos globales y que viajan perfectamente. Agradecer que todas las instituciones están haciendo un esfuerzo enorme para favorecer la coproducción internacional. Cada vez es más fácil, cada vez nos lo ponen más fácil, y eso se agradece mucho a todas las instituciones, tanto en la financiación privada como en toda la financiación pública que tenemos. Eso ha cogido una rueda estupenda, y yo soy optimista como Julia. Yo creo que se puede, y que con productoras trabajadoras al final esto no tiene ninguna magia, esto solamente es trabajo, trabajo y trabajo, y darle vueltas y pensar las opciones, y yo soy muy optimista. Creo que sí, que hay futuro de coproducción internacional con Asia.
Muchas gracias, Pilar. So we are finished from today. Thank you very much to all the panelists. It was a pleasure for me to host this event. Thank you to Instituto Cervantes for making this possible to meet us all here today. And I would like to invite everyone just to watch the films from today's festival, A Este Lado del Mundo. Hurry up, please, because it's only available until 6 p.m. And then we have Una Vez Más on demand today and tomorrow, Lina de Lima again on demand, Observar las Aves, which will be available 6 p.m. onwards, and then the short films Tarang and Groundhog Night. So thank you very much. Maraming salamat, terima kasih, Kop kun krab. Muchas gracias a todos.
Thank you.
Me enamoré de la lengua de Cervantes porque es una lengua viva, rápida y chévere.
You can now learn Spanish from your home. Please contact any of the Instituto Cervantes branches in Manila, Sydney, or Kuala Lumpur.